Good morning and welcome to Monday Morning Mojo with me, Jo Baldwin. Today is the 21st of November and it is World Hello Day. I had never come across this before, and when I did, I thought I'd look into it, and it intrigued me and thought could be quite a useful topic for today's chat. World Hello Day was instigated in 1973 by the McCormack brothers in the United States. At that time, there was a conflict going on between Egypt and Israel, the Yom Kippur War, and the McCormack brothers wrote over 1,000 letters to world leaders, writing in 7 different languages, to try and encourage them to use communication to resolve conflict instead of using force. And the tradition has continued annually ever since. So I thought, interesting, World Hello Day. What are they wanting us to do with this? There's a few different things that I thought look, quite interesting missions, if you will, tasks for today. One of them is to try and say hello to at least 10 people, 10 different people throughout the day today. Now, how easy or difficult do you think that might be? How many people do you come across in the course of the day? How many people do you normally say hello to? And how many do you walk past without anything but not even a glance? And it's really common, I think, in this day and age. We're all head down in our electronic devices, scrolling and watching things on phones and laptops. And we're not always really sort of giving any acknowledgement to the other people around us. So think about who you could say hello to today. It might be colleagues in work. It might be somebody that you get into a lift with. It might be somebody on the train. It might be the barista in the coffee shop. Or it might be that you make a really conscious effort to get in touch with somebody. Perhaps somebody you've lost touch with. Perhaps somebody you've had a bit of a falling out with. And this could be the very thing that reconnects you, that patches things up, that makes amends and sets you off with a better relationship with that person again. Another thing that I thought could be really fun today is to see how many languages you can say hello in, and perhaps learn a few different languages that you could say hello in. Without doing any Googling or searching or researching, I had a quick scribble down and found that I can say hello in 8 different languages in addition to English. Can't say very much more in many of them, but I can at least say hello in 8 different languages. So just doing that when you're traveling the world, when you're on holidays, can just ease the interaction between you and the natives in the country that you're visiting. So what is it that's so important about that word hello? Well, a greeting is just a basic function of communication, isn't it? It's a sign of respect. It acknowledges that the other person exists. And sometimes it will trigger a conversation. Not always, but often it might, it can trigger a conversation with somebody that you've never met before, and who knows where that conversation might lead. So it helps connect at a personal level. And a hello can even make friends of 2 strangers. As I say, you do never quite know what interests you might have in common when you strike up a conversation. And it might just bring a smile to somebody's face if they are feeling a little bit lonely or alone that day. And social interaction is really essential for our mental well-being, and it makes a contribution to our health and our longevity to have that social interaction. You never know what might be going on for somebody else as you pass them in the street, as you sit across from them on a train, as you're served by them in a shop or cafe. And to be alone and to feel lonely can have a massive impact on mental and physical well-being. So a hello from you might just make somebody else's day, might make them feel an awful lot better about themselves and about life in general. And it might be the only human interaction that person might have today, depending on what job they do, whether they work alone, whether they are immersed in electronic gadgets. That actual moment of human interaction, especially if it's done in person, might be a very special thing for somebody today. And we hate feeling ignored, don't we? Even as you pass somebody on the street, or certainly when I'm out walking the dogs, I try and make a point of a hello, a quick smile, a quick nod of the head. And most people return that, especially other dog walkers. But occasionally you'll get somebody and it's just a complete blank. And it just has an effect of just knocking your mood, really. And it's interesting, isn't it, that people like cleaners, porters, backstage guys, drivers, they all report a much higher opinion of those celebrities and famous people who said hello to them, who just took a moment to say hello and perhaps also a little thank you to acknowledge what they were doing for them, compared with those celebrities that walk past and completely blank them, don't acknowledge them. So that word hello, and maybe an extra word thank you in some cases, can go a really long way. I thought today I would just move on one step further from the hello and just talk a little bit about communication in general, and just share a few tips that I've learnt through my coach training. And some of it's common sense, some of it you will know already, but it's always worth a reminder. Because communication can be a wonderful thing, but it could also be a real stumbling block for some people. And communication done badly can cause major issues and sometimes even lead to conflict. So just a few little hints and tips to consider when you're communicating with other people, particularly verbal, face-to-face. One of them is that if you want to give an opinion or feedback on what they're saying, I think it's always quite wise and polite to ask for permission first. Is it okay if I just share some thoughts on that? Is it okay if I give you some feedback on that? And try and do that, try and give those observations without being too critical. Sometimes what somebody's saying to you is something that they've got very entrenched in. It's an opinion, it's an ideation that they've got really fixed about. And actually you can see another side to this that could perhaps help matters. So sometimes it's worth trying to just reframe gently to show them a different perspective on what it is they're talking about. Another one is when you're asking questions, try and just ask one at a time. Don't bombard people with one question that's built on the back of another, sometimes two or three together. This is something that I used to be guilty of, and I think sometimes it comes from a medical background, that as a doctor you ask a question, you assume that perhaps that the patient doesn't quite know what you're getting at, so you start to ask it in a different way, and you might add a little bit extra onto it, and by the end of it the patient's got no idea what you wanted to know in the first place. So just one succinct question at a time will get you there much more quickly and easily. When you're talking to somebody, sort of mirror their language, use the kind of language they're using. If it's a very formal setting and they're speaking in a formal way, maintain the formality. If it's a much more casual setting and they're even using a few sort of slang words or shorthand, you can go with that as well. And then if you're in a position where you're communicating and you're delivering something that's perhaps offering your knowledge or expertise, try and not baffle people with too much jargon or use long words that perhaps, isn't going to be familiar for them. So just consider your audience and who you're talking to, and whether what you're saying is going to actually be understood. Don't put words into their mouths. Don't assume that you know what they're saying, and don't sort of try and twist things. Be patient, give them time and space to say what they're saying, and listen. Actively listen and hear the words that they're using before you make a sort of a response to that. And finally, be open. Be open to hearing out somebody else's point of view and be willing to consider it. There might be a counter argument, and you might then ask for that permission to give the feedback and your opinion. But be open and be willing to consider in the first place, and therein perhaps is what will bring peace rather than conflict. So there's a few little tips on communication in general. I challenge you today to try and say hello to 10 different people. Consider about the impact that you might be bringing to certain people, and think about how many languages you know that you can say hello in. So a little fun one for this week, but it might make a little impact and it might inspire you to consider how you communicate with different people. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Monday morning for more Monday Mojo. Bye now.